You sure you're in the right place, Grandma?
The shuttle hissed as it touched down on the landing pad, a sharp contrast to the stillness that hung over Kestrel base. Dust kicked up around the metal struts, swirling in lazy spirals before settling again. Inside the shuttle, Rhea Morgan sat with her pack at her feet and her gloved hands resting motionless in her lap. She didn't move until the loading ramp began to lower. No one came to greet her. No fanfare. No welcome committee. Just the faint buzz of security drones and the distant clatter of early morning drills echoing across the concrete compound. She stepped out alone. The first thing they noticed were the scars, not fresh, but deep, carved across her cheek and neck like brushstrokes on canvas. Her left hand, wrapped in synthetic fiber, flexed with a slight mechanical rhythm, augmented, clearly. And then her age, older than the average recruit, but not frail. She moved like someone who'd memorized pain, not run from it. A group of younger trainees paused their cadence work to watch her cross the platform. One of them, a wiry private with too much energy and not enough sense, leaned toward his friend and whispered, "Who let someone's mom wander onto base?" They snickered. She heard it. She didn't react. Past the barracks. Past the armory. Rhea knew where to go. She'd been here before, years ago, under different orders, with a different name. Omega Unit. Kestrel Black Division. Now just Rhea again. She reported to the intake officer with minimal words. He scanned her ID chip, blinked when her file auto-locked after the first 3 lines. "Your clearance level's above mine," he muttered. She didn't respond. "You'll be assigned to Bravo Squad under Staff Sergeant Rennick," he continued, handing her a wristband. "Drills start at 0500. Try not to be late, he's a hard ass." Her expression didn't change. Not at the name. Not at the tone. She walked into the squad training yard just as the sun began to rise behind the compound walls, casting long shadows across the field. The squad was already stretching. Young. Fit. Hungry. Rhea's presence halted the rhythm. Some stared openly. Others averted their eyes, unsure how to categorize her. Veteran? Instructor? Mistake? Then he appeared, tall, lean, and smirking, Staff Sergeant Blake Rennick. He looked her up and down once and chuckled. "Oh," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "They're letting ghosts enlist now?" The squad laughed, unsure but willing to follow his lead. Rhea met his gaze and said nothing. She didn't need to speak. Because one day soon, they'd stop laughing. The midday sun beat down on the training yard, casting long shadows across rows of sweating recruits. Dust kicked up from boots hitting dry earth in rhythm. Commands were shouted, bodies moved, orders obeyed. Rhea Morgan stood apart. While others fumbled with their rifles during the breakdown drills, she moved through the motions with quiet efficiency, quick hands, no wasted motion. Her face was unreadable, calm in a sea of chaos. That's when he spotted her. Staff Sergeant Blake Rennick strutted across the yard like it belonged to him. Sunglasses perched on his head, sleeves rolled to the elbows, and confidence dripping from every movement. He watched her for a few seconds, narrowing his eyes like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. Then came the smirk. He blew a whistle, sharp and commanding. "Hold up." The drills paused. Recruits stood at ease, panting, catching their breath. Rennick walked directly toward Rhea. "You there," he said, voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "What's your name?" She looked at him with the slightest lift of her chin. "Morgan." He had the scars along her jaw, the thin one that crept up toward her temple, and the burn mark along the left wrist. His grin widened. "Morgan, huh? And what exactly are you doing here?" he asked, gesturing to the others. "We running a retirement program now?" A few nervous chuckles came from the sidelines. Recruits glanced at each other, unsure how far this would go. Rhea didn't respond. Rennick stepped closer, dropping his voice just enough to sound personal, but still loud enough to carry. "You sure you're in the right place, Grandma Scars?" This isn't rehab. This is where we build warriors. Private Elena Park, standing 2 rows back, shifted uncomfortably. Her eyes flicked to Rhea, then back to the ground. Still, no response. Rennick wasn't done. Unless those cuts and burns are your medals. In that case, he gave a mock salute. Hell of a way to survive, barely. Another laugh, louder this time. Corporal Knox cracked a grin, but even he looked unsure now. Rhea stood still. Unflinching. Her face gave nothing away, no shame, no anger, no satisfaction. Just silence. That seemed to unsettle Rennick more than a comeback would've. He scoffed, stepping back. Well, try not to fall apart out here, Morgan. I'm not patching up any more antiques. Then he turned, barking at the others to resume drills. As the unit snapped back into motion, Park stole one more glance at Rhea. The older woman hadn't moved, hadn't blinked. She simply picked up her rifle, reset her stance, and went back to work, like nothing had been said at all. But the silence she left behind said more than any words could. The simulation range buzzed with tension and gunpowder. Targets popped out from cover, metal torsos on mechanical tracks, painted to mimic insurgents. Smoke canisters drifted low to the ground, simulating haze. The crack of rubber-tipped rounds echoed through the field as recruits moved in teams, firing and covering, yelling over comms. Captain Rhea Morgan moved alone. She was paired with Corporal Jared Knox, though paired was generous. He'd already charged ahead, eager to impress. She didn't chase him. She advanced with surgical precision, no panic, no shouting, no waste. Duck. Fire. Shift cover. 2 to the chest. 1 to the head. Target down. From the command tower, Staff Sergeant Blake Rennick leaned against the rail, arms folded, watching. Clocking her, a tech officer called. Team 12, Morgan and Knox, simulation time, 2:38. All targets neutralized. 0 misses. Rennick's eyebrow twitched. He looked again, squinting through the smoke. Rhea was already unloading her rifle, calm as a surgeon scrubbing out. She didn't speak to Knox, who had only just realized she'd cleared the rest of the field behind him. Inside the squad tent afterward, Knox flopped down onto a crate, breathing hard. He glanced over at her, curious. You move like you've done this real world. Rhea didn't respond. She sat on the floor, cleaning her weapon with quiet focus. Every motion exact. Every part placed with care. She got lucky. Rennick barked from the doorway, loud enough for all nearby to hear. Anyone can get a clean run once. Even a broken clock's right twice a day. A couple of recruits snickered, but fewer than before. Knox raised an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. Yeah, but most clocks don't shoot that straight under pressure. Rennick's expression tightened. You volunteering for sarcasm drills, Corporal? No, Staff Sergeant, Knox muttered, looking away. Elena Park, seated nearby with a canteen in hand, watched Rhea quietly. She hadn't said a word since the last drill. But something had shifted. The way she moved, efficient, controlled, completely detached, had a strange weight to it. Not arrogance. Not fear. Something colder. Sharper. It was the kind of presence you didn't develop in training. You earned it, the hard way. Later, as the recruits cleared the area, Rhea lingered behind to recheck the equipment. No one asked her to. She just did it. Then she stepped outside alone, letting the late afternoon breeze cut through the sweat and heat. From the tower, Halden watched her silhouette moving across the range like a ghost, methodical, forgotten, still dangerous. He didn't smile. He just nodded once. She's still in there, he thought. Widow's still in there. The barracks were quieter after lights out, filled with the soft hum of ventilation and the occasional creak of a bunk. But not everyone slept. Private Elena Park sat cross-legged in the corner of the common room, her datapad glowing faint blue in the dim light. She glanced around once, then back to the screen. Her search bar read. Captain Rhea Morgan, dishonorable discharge? Nothing. Not at first. No formal listings. No court-martial logs. But beneath the surface, inside obscure military blogs, archived forums, and redacted files, fragments began to appear. Snippets of chatter from ex-operatives. Declassified mission summaries, heavily blacked out. Some lines still legible. Team leader compromised. Only one known survivor. Designation, widow. Elena frowned. She tapped open another link, an old message thread from a Black Ops veterans group. Most of the usernames were anonymous, but the thread was years old and still active. One post read, "She was Kestrel Black. That squad wasn't just elite, they were myth. Ghosts. They operated where satellites don't reach." Another user had replied, "If you saw her walk out alive, covered in blood, you didn't talk about it. You just thanked the gods she wasn't aiming at you." The name kept repeating, like a whisper buried in concrete. Widow. Elena sat back slowly, staring at the scarred face in her memory, calm, efficient, eerily composed. The same woman who moved without hesitation during the sim runs. The one who didn't flinch when Rennick mocked her in front of everyone. Not fragile. Not lucky. Trained. Hardened. Controlled. Across the barracks, Corporal Jared Knox leaned against the wall, arms folded. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, voice low. Elena jumped slightly. She turned the screen toward him, hesitant. "Do you know what Kestrel Black is?" Knox blinked, surprised. "Thought that was just a rumor. Black-level ghost unit. I figured the brass made that up to scare rookies." Elena pointed to the screen. She was one of them. Rhea Morgan. Call sign Widow. Knox stared at the name for a long second. "That explains everything," he muttered. "The silence. The way she moves. Hell, even the scars." Across the room, a few other recruits stirred, whispering in hushed tones. The rumors were spreading, one fragment at a time. Someone said she'd been disavowed after a mission went sideways. Someone else claimed her team betrayed her. Some said she killed them all and walked out. No one knew the truth. But the whispers had shifted. Not pity. Not mockery. Now it was awe. Outside the barracks, Captain Rhea Morgan stood in the shadows, quietly smoking a slim, unfiltered cigarette. Her eyes flicked toward the dorms, just for a moment, as if she could feel the ripple in the air. Then she turned and disappeared into the night. The combat gym echoed with grunts and heavy thuds. Mats lined the floor, scuffed and stained with use. Padded dummies stood silent against the wall like forgotten soldiers. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. It was sparring day, and Staff Sergeant Blake Rennick was circling like a wolf waiting to pounce. The recruits formed a loose ring around the mat. Sweat, adrenaline, and curiosity clung to the air. Rhea Morgan was tying her wrist wraps in the corner, calm, precise, as always. Rennick clapped his hands. "All right, fresh meat. Time for a little real-world lesson." His eyes locked on her like a predator. "You, Morgan. Step up." There were murmurs in the ring. Elena Park stiffened. Knox looked away, jaw tight. Even the younger recruits glanced at one another, some eager, some unsure. Rhea didn't blink. She stood and walked to the center of the mat, quiet as smoke. Rennick smirked. "Let's see what rehab taught you." He didn't wait for a bow. He lunged. Rhea sidestepped, barely. The first blow missed. His second, a heavy jab, she caught on the outside of her forearm. No flair. No flourish. Just control. The room grew tense. Rennick pushed harder, throwing elbows, knees, a low sweep. He wanted a show. Blood, maybe. Her pride broken. Something he could gloat about. But she didn't give him anything. Every strike he threw, she redirected. Every grab he attempted, she slipped. He was faster. She was smarter. He was louder. She was lethal. Then it changed. He overreached. She moved like a trap springing shut, hooked his arm, locked his elbow, rotated with brutal precision. Crack. His body slammed into the mat with a thud that silenced the room. She stood over him, knee pressed gently into his sternum, arm twisted behind his back, one move away from breaking it. She looked down at him, her voice flat. Tapped. He didn't say it. She shifted slightly. He winced. Tapped. She let go and stepped back. No gloating. No smile. Just silence. Rennick sat up slowly, red-faced and breathing hard. His pride lay in pieces around him. No one laughed this time. The recruits were dead quiet. Rhea returned to her corner and began undoing her wraps with the same calm she started with, as if the match hadn't happened at all. Knox muttered under his breath, "Holy sh." Park stared at her with wide eyes. Others just watched, unsure whether to cheer or be afraid. The whisper had started again. But it sounded different now. Not rumor. Respect. The briefing room was dimly lit, far from the noise of drills and sparring mats. No recruits here. No barking trainers. Just polished steel walls, a silent holoprojector, and the presence of command. General Elias Halden sat at the far end of the long table, reading from a secure tablet. When the door hissed open, he didn't look up. Captain Rhea Morgan stepped in without a word. She didn't salute. She didn't have to. Halden set the tablet down slowly and raised his eyes to her. They hadn't spoken in nearly 2 years. "You held back," he said simply. Rhea didn't respond. "In the gym. You could have shattered his arm. You didn't." Still, silence. He nodded to himself, like that answer, or lack of one, was exactly what he'd expected. "You're not here to blend in, Rhea," Halden said, his voice lower now. "You know that, right?" Her eyes flicked to him. Not hard. Not cold. Just cautious. "You pulled me back out," she said, quietly. He nodded. "Because you're not done." "Not yet." She looked away for a moment, jaw tight. Halden stood, slowly. Walked around the table and stood beside her, not behind. "I know what they say," he murmured. The whispers. The looks. Rennick's nonsense. Let them talk. They don't know who you are. She stared ahead, unmoving. "You didn't fail that mission," Halden said, voice firm. "You were betrayed. And then abandoned. But not by me." That pulled her gaze to him, finally. There it was again, trust, buried beneath layers of control. Worn, tested, but never broken. "I brought you back to finish what they tried to erase," he continued. "Not to fight recruits. Not to be a ghost in the shadows." A beat passed. Heavy silence. Then he leaned closer, and his voice dropped to something only she would hear. "You're not done being widow." "Not yet." Rhea didn't answer right away. But something in her posture shifted, just slightly. The stillness around her wasn't the stillness of surrender. It was readiness. Contained. Waiting. Halden nodded again and stepped back. "There's a unit being built. Quiet. Off-grid. They need a leader who's been through hell and still walks upright. You'll hear more soon." Rhea turned to leave. At the door, she paused. No salute. Just 5 words, the first hint of acceptance in her voice. "I don't want revenge." Halden tilted his head. "Good." A flicker of something passed between them, not warmth, but something more valuable in their world, clarity. Then she was gone, and the door hissed shut behind her. Halden remained, eyes on the tablet, where a redacted report blinked at the bottom of the screen. Operation Widow, status, reactivated. The squad was called to the main hangar, a cold, echoing space normally reserved for tactical briefings or disciplinary hearings. The tension in the air buzzed like static. They stood in formation. Combat boots on concrete. Ranks neat, back straight. But no one knew why they'd been summoned. Staff Sergeant Blake Rennick paced in front of them like a shark in shallow water, holding a tablet and smirking. "This won't take long," he announced. "Performance review." He tossed a glance at Captain Rhea Morgan, who stood off to the side, arms crossed, saying nothing. She hadn't been informed either. That was by design. He tapped the screen. "Now, we've got a lot of strong potential in this unit. But one thing drags the chain lower than a weak link: dead weight." He turned the tablet so everyone could see. An official military document lit up: "Discharge, dishonorable, Captain Rhea Morgan." A few recruits gasped. Some just stared. Rennick paced slowly, enjoying every second. "You all think she's some kind of ghost from the old world. Scars and silence in shadowstalking. But here's the truth." He read from the report, loud enough to fill the hangar. "Failure to complete mission objectives resulted in the deaths of 4 team members. Court-martial waived in favor of discharge due to psychological compromise." He looked up, eyes cold. She cracked. Elena Park shifted, uncomfortable. Jared Knox clenched his jaw. Someone in the back muttered, "This can't be right." But Rennick was relentless. She wasn't a legend. She was a liability. And we've treated her like some kind of quiet savior. He barked a laugh. "All those scars, and nothing to show for it." He turned fully to her now, eyes gleaming. "What were you, really, Morgan?" The silence was sharp. Rhea didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She stepped forward, calm as ever. One step. That was all. Her voice was soft, but it filled the room. "You want to know what I was?" She looked past him, at the squad. Straight into their eyes. "I was the last one breathing in a kill zone we were never supposed to survive. I was the one who called the evac for bodies we couldn't retrieve. I was the name they used to bury the truth." She looked at Rennick, steady. "And I'm still here." The room was silent. Rennick tried to speak, but the moment was gone. He'd misjudged them. Badly. Knox stepped forward. "You read that file like it meant something," he said. "But I've seen her in the field. So have all of us." Others nodded. Park, quietly at first, then more. Rhea didn't smile. She didn't need to. The whispers were gone now. They saw her. Not as a myth. Not as a failure. But as a survivor. The silence after Rhea's words lingered in the hangar like smoke. No one moved. No one spoke. The shame on Rennick's face was sudden and raw, but he wasn't done yet. His mouth opened, ready to retake control, to twist the story back in his favor. Then the door behind them opened. Boot steps. Slow. Sure. Singular. Every recruit turned as General Elias Halden walked into the hangar. No announcement. No warning. Just his presence, and the sudden, collective straightening of spines. He walked to the center of the squad without haste, eyes scanning each soldier, each face. Then he stopped beside Rhea. His voice was quiet. Level. But it cut through the hangar like a blade. "Her name is Widow." The air left the room. Captain Rhea Morgan. Omega Unit. Kestrel Black Division. Every recruit now stood completely still. No one dared look away. 31 confirmed Black Ops missions. 11 exfiltrations. 6 high-value targets. 3 recoveries. No failures. He paused. Looked directly at Rennick. She was betrayed. Abandoned. Left for dead in hostile territory. And she still walked out. Alone. The words hit like thunder despite his calm tone. They weren't shouted. They were declared, absolute, final, immovable. Rennick stood frozen, color draining from his face. His cocky sneer had vanished. He wasn't staring at a disgraced relic anymore. He was looking at a weapon the system had once hidden and just put back on the board. Rhea remained still beside Halden, eyes forward, unreadable. Private Elena Park swallowed hard, her gaze full of awe now. Corporal Knox let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. A murmur rippled through the squad, reverent, stunned. Not fear. Not anymore. Recognition. Halden continued, slower now. Most of you weren't supposed to know her name. And she never asked you to. But now you do. He looked back to Rhea. Widow is no longer classified. She's operational. Then he turned to face the entire squad. Anyone who questions her authority, now questions mine. Silence. The squad saluted as one, boots echoing against the concrete. Halden turned to go, his voice echoing once more before he disappeared down the hall. Dismissed. The door hissed shut behind him. And there she stood. Not a rumor. Not a scarred veteran hiding in plain sight. But Widow, named, claimed, and returned. Even Rennick couldn't meet her eyes now. Rhea said nothing. She didn't have to. The room would never see her the same way again. The next morning, the hangar felt different. No one mentioned the general's words. No one needed to. They still echoed in the steel walls like the residue of a storm. The squad moved quieter now, sharper, like they'd just realized they were training beside a myth who turned out to be real. Staff Sergeant Blake Rennick didn't speak to Rhea Morgan at all. He kept his eyes down when she passed. During drills, he barked less. Stood farther from the center. When called upon for a demonstration, he deferred to Knox. He was not a broken man, but he had been stripped down to size. Rhea noticed, but didn't acknowledge it. There was no satisfaction in watching him shrink. She hadn't wanted to humiliate him, only survive him. And now, she had. After drills, Corporal Knox approached her while the others cooled down. He carried himself differently now, not as a peer, but as a soldier aware of rank, even if it hadn't been updated on paper. He gave her a respectful nod. Ma'am. Rhea raised an eyebrow. Knox shrugged. Feels more right than captain, if I'm being honest. She said nothing, but didn't correct him either. Later that day, as the squad broke off into small units for sparring, Private Elena Park approached slowly. Her usual confidence was still there, but undercut with something new, reverence. Captain Morgan, she asked. Rhea turned. Park hesitated, fiddling with her gloves. Then, the way you moved during the hand-to-hand with Rennick. That wasn't standard counter-tactics. It was surgical. Rhea watched her for a moment. Measured. Park straightened under her gaze. Then, quietly, could you teach me? There was no arrogance in her voice. No glory hunting. Just hunger, for discipline, for control, for knowledge. Rhea nodded once. Tomorrow. After drills. Stay late. Park's shoulders relaxed, just slightly. Yes, ma'am. As the private walked off, Rhea allowed herself the smallest exhale. She wasn't rebuilding a reputation. She was rebuilding something deeper, trust. Not just in the squad, but in herself. She walked through the hangar alone, observing. The recruits no longer whispered about her. They watched her. Studied her. But not like she was a ghost or anomaly, like she was a soldier, one of their own. Halden had given her the call sign back. But they, the ones sweating and bleeding beside her, were giving her something even rarer. Belonging. There was still work to do. Still missions to come. Still scars to carry. But for the first time in years, Rhea Morgan wasn't just surviving. She was leading. And she hadn't had to scream to do it. Just stand her ground, and wait for the world to remember who she was. The sun hadn't yet broken the horizon. The base was still, caught in the breath between night and morning. Steel corridors lay in shadow, Training fields empty, lights just beginning to flicker on inside the barracks. Captain Rhea Morgan ran alone through the perimeter trail. Her stride was steady, precise. Not hurried, deliberate. Focused. She wore no rank. No tech. Just sweat on her brow and rhythm in her breath. Her footsteps whispered against the packed earth, the path she ran every morning, long before anyone else stirred. But today was different. Because this time, someone else was watching. General Elias Halden stood near the tree line just off the path, arms folded, his frame barely visible in the gray pre-dawn light. He didn't call out. Didn't break the quiet. As she approached the final bend, Rhea slowed slightly. She saw him. She didn't stop. But her eyes met his as she passed. No salute. No words. Just a glance, and a small nod from him. Acknowledgement. And from her, no smile, not quite. That wasn't her way. But there was something new in her eyes. A flicker of peace. A softening. Not everything had been healed. The scars were still there. Some always would be. But something had shifted. She no longer ran to outrun her past. She was running forward now. As the sun finally broke over the treetops, casting gold across the compound, Rhea slowed to a stop near the training field. She stood still, breathing in the morning air, letting the warmth touch her face. Behind her, Halden remained in the shadows. Watching. Trusting. The recruits would be up soon. Drills would start. New challenges would come. Missions, orders, choices, all waiting just beyond the quiet. But for this moment, she stood alone. Not isolated. Not abandoned. Just whole. She reached down, picked up a small stone from the edge of the trail, and turned it in her palm. Rough. Scarred. Solid. Then she placed it gently on the corner of the training ring, her own quiet ritual. A marker. Not of where she'd been. But of where she stood now. Not widow. Not captain. Rhea. Still fighting. Still here. And finally, not just surviving. Living. If Rhea Morgan's quiet strength moved you, hit that like button and show some love for the warriors who fight in silence. Drop a comment below. Was Rhea right to stay silent?